Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Skills and Abilities. Today we're going to be looking at another one of the golems. Since we took a look at the iron golem, I figure, you know, why not, let's go over some of the other golems. We're going to go over the clay golem today. Now the clay golem seems relatively self-explanatory, but he does have some interesting quirks and mechanics which you might not otherwise necessarily know. The clay golem is the only golem that slows down targets unless you build a iron golem out of an item that has slows target by effect. He also increases his slows target by with his level, so as you level him up more and more, his slows target by effect will increase to the point where eventually he will have a relatively nice amount of slows target by. And if I dump in all my points into this guy, you'll notice that he has a very nice slows target by of 71%. The cap of slows target by is 80%, by the way, which means that this clay golem is slowing down everything by a tremendously large amount at level 39. Now, of course, you might not necessarily want to max him out because who has that many points to waste into a golem? But he definitely is one of the easiest golems to use on a Necromancer. I feel like the other golems are more specific to a very individual purpose. Like maybe you're trying to do a high utility iron golem, or maybe you're using the fire golem for PvP, or maybe because you're a poison necromancer and you feel like you're going to get an extra benefit from obviously spamming the lower resistance curse. There's different reasons why you might use each one of the golems, but the clay golem is just like the generically good golem. It does very, very well. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, wouldn't the iron golem be better if I made him out of something that had a relatively high amount of slows target by? Well, to answer your question, no. The clay golem and the iron golem apply their slows differently. So let me see if I can explain this as best I can. When you are a character or an iron golem and you want to apply your slows target's effect, you have to actually physically hit the target. So for instance, if anybody you want to slow, you've got to go in there and you've got to actually whack them. All right, so the same applies to your iron golem. However, the clay golem actually has a separate mechanic involving his slows target by, which is basically anything that attacks him is also slowed by the same percentage. So instead of just being slowed when he hits a target, everything that hits him is also slowed. And this is one of the things that was tested back in the day with the Iron Golem and him having slows target by, to try and see if the Iron Golem could potentially be better than the Clay Golem in terms of the slows target by effect. And as it turns out, not quite so, because of the way that the Clay Golem applies his slows target by. And this also means that the Clay Golem is surprisingly much more tanky than pretty much any other golem. And this is because that when anybody hits a clay golem, they immediately get this slow effect on them. And I mean, you can just simply go out of a town and you can let your golem fight some monsters and see this effect. And as soon as the golem touches the monster, you can see that they are just completely and utterly slowed down to the point of oblivion. But not only that, also the take your Reaper's Toll from you, sir. Also, the other monsters that hit him are being slowed down, which is very, very helpful to keeping himself alive, because everything that tags him is being slowed down by the same percentage. You can see that this monster right here that he has never touched has been slowed down. Now, you don't necessarily have to put a large amount of points into the clay golem itself to get him high enough to actually utilize him. Honestly, plus to skills can usually get you far enough with just 1 point in the clay golem. What I do recommend you do, though, is you make sure you have at least 1 point in summon resistance down here, because it's going to have a huge effect on keeping him alive. And then also, golem mastery itself is also a very, very nice way to help keep him alive, because it's going to beef up his HP just massively. As you can see, he has 13,398 life, which is pretty ridiculous at this level. And if I reset my character and I just put max points into the golem itself, you notice he only has 3,932. Not quite as good as with the golem mastery, which beefs him up even more. Now, of course, if you really wanted to beef up the clay golem, I would recommend putting max points into the golem himself. max points into Golem Mastery, and then at least 1 point into Summon Resistance. And honestly, the rest of these things don't even really matter all that much. The Blood Golem gives him life per level, which isn't really that much. If I put 1 point into the Blood Golem here, you'll see he didn't really go up a huge amount. He goes to 34,801, which is already a lot. And I could cap out the Blood Golem, and he's still only at 38,538. So you can see that the massive amount of HP that he gains is actually from the Golem Mastery skill itself, and not really the Blood Golem. Blood Golem really doesn't give him as much as the Golem Mastery does. And the Golem Mastery also helps him run around faster, which is also very nice, and gives him a little bit more of a defensive mechanic, because, you know, he can get from monster to monster quicker. It helps him run around and just be evil. Now, granted, he can only attack one monster, though. And honestly, he is your mainstay of your army. So at any point, you're going to use him to resummon. You're going to be able to get him to force the army or the enemy where you want him to be. Take, for instance, in a close quarters area like the sewers. Let's say we were stuck in an area where there was a really large number of monsters right at the edge of a doorway like this. Everything was just kind of stuck here at the doorway. One thing you can do is you can summon your golem behind the door, and you can try and get the monsters to turn around and fight the golem on the other side of the door. There's really no reason not to respawn your golem at any time for tactical purposes. Drop him directly on top of the group of monsters that you feel like is the most dangerous. Put him in harm's way, because quite honestly, especially if you beef him up high enough, his HP is so high that he will very rarely ever die in just about any situation you put him in. And the Clay Golem is just super duper useful for a lot of things, and he can be stacked with other effects too. So let's talk real quick about stacking him with other effects, shall we?
That to good use.
Bink, 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 bink. Okay, so let's say, for instance, you have your Clay Golem. Maybe he's not maxed. Maybe he is just a slightly lower version of the Clay Golem. Okay, so let's just for giggles, let's say you have a level 1 Clay Golem, a level 1 Golem Mastery, and a level 1 Summon Resistance. And your Golem is at 65% slows enemy target. You can stack this with curses like Decrepify. So Decrepify will bring down the speed of the monster as well, because it actually is the slowest target by effect. You can also slow him down with other effects, like, for instance, if your mercenary were to be wearing a piece of equipment that had slowest target by on it, like, for instance, mine actually has Decrepify on it. So he's going to be spamming Decrepify while while my Golem is also slowing down the target. And if I were to give him some slows target of effects other than this, it would definitely help a little bit more, because everything stacks up to the slows target cap of 80%. Now, it doesn't stack linearly, so it's not just going to go like, okay, well, this guy has 50% slowest target by, and this guy has 50% slowest target by, so that's 100. Let's go, buddy. No, what it does is it stacks in the terms of, like, he is reducing the monster's speed by his percentage. So let's take his percentage right now of 65%. So if we were to pop open a calculator here, and let me bring it up on the screen so you guys can actually see it. Well, that is way too big. That is way too big. There we go. All right, so let's pretend we have a mythical speed of 100 on a monster. Okay, so that is his maximum speed is 100. All right, so we subtract 65%, which is the speed that the Golem slows him down by. Which brings him down to 35. So 35 is now his current speed. So he is at 35% of 100, basically. The next percentage, like for instance with Decrepify, would bring him down by 50%. So you would subtract 50%, not from the original 100 number, but from the 35% number, which gives us 17.5%. Now, 17.5% is above the cap. of 80%. So it would end up being capped at 20. So the monster would remain at 20% speed with the clay golem and decrepify on him at the same time. This could also be done with slows target by equipment. Like, for instance, if you were wearing something like a woe stave or any other number of items specifically revolving around slows target by. I like to put slows target by equipment on my mercenary to really stack it up, and then throw Decrepify on too. Why not? All of it really stacks very nicely on the monsters and makes them pretty much in slow motion. You know, they're just like. It's hilarious. So the Clay Golem has a lot of things going for him. He has lots of HP. So he's going to get in there. He's going to tank for you. He's going to do his job. He doesn't have good damage, though. So I think it goes without saying that the Clay Golem doesn't have good damage and can't have good damage. Even if you were to max out the Fire Golem specifically, the Fire Golem would not bring up his damage enough to make it worthwhile, especially in Hell difficulty. So he's doing 26 to 61 damage, and if I beef up the Fire Golem to its maximum, you'll notice that he's still only doing about 29 to 69 damage. So really, really quite pathetic as far as the damage is concerned. You can give him a little bit more defense with the Iron Golem, and as you can see, that brings him up to... it doesn't say his defense, does it? Oh, there's 1570 on his defense with the Iron Golem maxing him out. And of course, we could max out the Golem itself. And then the Blood Golem, of course, gives him more HP. And as you can see, it takes a lot of points to max out a Golem. Right now, we have literally the maxed out Golem that you could possibly ever get, wasting every single point we have in this. So he currently has... attack rating of 1,930, defense of 1,570, a life pool of 43,901, which is pretty freaking ridiculous. Attack rating plus 840%, slows enemies by 72%, which is pretty sweet. And then his damage at 49 to 115, which is just absolutely terrible. He's never killing anything. Like, he's never killing anything at that particular amount of damage. Maybe in normal difficulty, he could probably kill some stuff. But as you can see, that's not his purpose. His purpose is not to kill things. His purpose is to be your meat shield, your tank. He's supposed to be out there absorbing large amounts of damage, and that's what he's good at. He is absolutely great at absorbing large amounts of damage, and he's particularly unkillable in most situations. And a good golem can help keep your mercenary alive as well, which is definitely very nice. So as your mercenary is out there doing his job, killing things, your golem is running around, you know, is running around watching his back, keeping him safe. Now, there is one more thing that the Clay Golem is absolutely great at, and that is, of course, the abuse of its massive life pool in terms of Iron Maiden. So in earlier levels, especially in zones where you might not necessarily have the damage, but Iron Maiden is still particularly useful. Let me go ahead and show you guys this, because why not? It is a very easy way to get some very interesting damage off, especially on the act bosses and things like that, because quite honestly, act bosses is where this really kind of works the best. In normal difficulty and in nightmare difficulty, necromancers sometimes have a lot of issues with killing act bosses, especially Diablo and Baal, because there's no corpses there and things get a little spicy. But one thing that you can do, which is extremely easy, is you can get a relatively low-level golem. And you know what? We won't even put any points into Golem Mastery or Summon Resistance. And we're going to grab Iron Maiden. So what you're going to do is you're going to cast your golem, and you're going to take him somewhere where he can have some fun playing around with some monsters, right? You want him to go down here and get beat up. That's the entire point. Then you cast Iron Maiden on the monsters, and you basically let them kill themselves. Of course, my Merc is in there just doing some work, isn't he? My Merc is just doing some work. I gotta have a ridiculous mercenary. Hold on, let me see if I can Let me see if I can fix this. Easiest way to fix this, honestly, is to get him killed. Oh no. Poor mercenary. Poor mercenary. Poor mercenary. Now, this particular thing does not really work very well in Hell difficulty because at this point the monsters have so much life that, quite honestly, they are ridiculously kind of nuts in the HP territory. So even after you get a relatively high level of Iron Maiden, even if we were to cap this out and cast this on the monsters, it just doesn't really do the kind of damage that you would want it to do to these monsters in Hell difficulty. But this does work very well in normal and nightmare difficulty. And now that the Merc is out of the way, I'm going to show you guys. Bink, 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 bink. All right, so let's grab our Golem and our Iron Maiden. And in normal difficulty, as you can see, the monsters really kind of hurt themselves when they do hit the Golem. I think my Golem might be too high level. He might actually have too much defense. Let me strip off a little bit of my monster's defense, shall I? We'll switch to a different set. Hey, now he's only level 16. Maybe that'll make a difference. Unfortunately, if the monsters, actually they changed it so that it works on attack, didn't they? I'll punch you in the face. I will punch you right in the face. Well, I got the players count set too. Oh, well, that would be why. Players 8 is going to have a little bit of a difficulty with this. Let's try some players 1 monsters, shall we? Iron Maiden doesn't scale well with player count. Get out of here. Punch you right in the eye. I'll punch you right in the eye. Anyway, when utilizing this with the Clay Golem, you'll notice that it does actually kind of work to slowly kill the monsters. It is a way to bypass act bosses specifically because they do hit pretty hard. So basically what you do is you just summon your Clay Golem, cast Iron Maiden on the act boss. You keep summoning the Iron Golem too. So every single time the Iron Golem is killed, you just resummon him. And he doesn't really cost that much mana to resummon, especially at lower levels. He's only about 60 mana. And you can resummon him repeatedly until monster is dead. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt to do, but it does work. And if you're just trying to bypass Diablo, which might be giving you a bit of a trouble, because he does tend to kill your skeletons relatively easily at the lower tiers, this is a rather interesting way that you can bypass the bosses. You can get them dead. It just takes a little bit of patience, a little bit of time. You're basically waiting on the monsters to beat down your golem and utilize that Iron Maiden effect to kill themselves. And you just got to make sure you keep the Iron Maiden up and keep the Clay Golem up and obviously stay alive yourself. As you can see, Eldritch is almost dead. He's getting there. A couple skeletons or something added into this would certainly help. But if you're in the situation where you're fighting Diablo, it's not always possible to have skeletons because he'll just be killing them all the time. And, you know, that's not fun. Come on, Eldritch. You must die for science. Come on, die for science. Die for science, Eldritch. For science! For science! Why is he not triggering the Iron Maiden? That's the question that I don't understand. I thought they changed it so that Iron Maiden works on attack, which means that he should be triggering it every single time he makes an attack, not only when he lands an attack. And it seems like he's having trouble landing an attack on the Clay Golem. Of course, because my Clay Golem is a lot higher level than he otherwise normally should be. And there we go. Eldritch is dead. So what's the final verdict? The final verdict is that the clay golem is one of the best golems that the Necromancer has. He does not do damage, but he does what he's supposed to do very well. He is an extremely good meat shield. He slows down his targets, and he keeps them from attacking. Now, if you were going to be going with some sort of Thorns build, you might want to avoid the clay golem. And the reason for this is because anything that slows down the attack rate of the monsters is going to decrease the overall Thorns damage that you receive. And for this reason, you just really don't want to go that particular route. You want monsters to, if you're going with some type of Thorns build or Iron Maiden or whatever, you want the monsters to attack faster. You want them to attack more voraciously. If anything, you would give them fanaticism so they could attack even faster. So having a monster, a golem that slows everything down is going to make things go slower in terms of Thorns damage, not faster. As you could see, the monsters had a really hard time even hitting the clay golem, as their attacks were almost like in slow motion for the most part, because 63% slowest target by is really darn slow. So if you were going to go with some type of Thorns, you probably would want to go with either the Blood Golem, the Iron Golem, or the Fire Golem, specifically if you were going to do a Thorns build. I think that's pretty much it when it comes to the Clay Golem. There is one fun thing with the Clay Golem, is that he can be stacked with cold effects. So cold is separate from slowest target by, and if you have a monster who is susceptible to cold damage, it can stack even higher. So a chilled monster that is also hit with a slowest target by effect can really stack on the slow, to the point where the monsters are just kind of just standing there and looking at you, blinking. I think that's pretty much it. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when my video is made out of clay. And as always, keep watching.